there or say anything inappropriate.
It's only going to be for our office, so we're all very familiar with the the full vocabulary spectrum.
Okay. And interrupt me if I'm going over time because I tend to ramble a little bit.
Yeah, we'll
But
maybe, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, and then we'll
sure.
find out. There are a couple of things I want to chat with everybody about too. So
Yeah, because I think this is important right now with how sort of realtors approach their clientele with their clientele are going to come up with a lot of obstacles is the rates are super high right now. So I'm just going to hold on. But ultimately what happens in this market is that it's just building up a pent up demand. And as soon as any kind of real move with the rates happen, the market will get flooded back again in with buyers and it'll immediately, especially in our market in Victoria, flip over to a seller's market again. If I was a buyer, I don't want to be putting in 15 offers on, having to compete against 15 cash offers on a single family dwelling in Victoria. Like, get
yeah,
in right now,
yeah,
right?
you know what? When the sales volumes are down at their lowest, really, that is an ideal time for buyers.
Especially for single family dwellings.
Yeah,
Like
they
right
should
now, I
take a
probably
hard
do.
look at it for sure. Yeah,
What's that?
they should be taking a real hard look at it because honestly,
Well,
you
because the rates are only going to be so I was going to talk about also what I feel what I'm finding a lot of the psychology with my clients are in that they don't remember that 6 months is actually a really really long time,
yeah.
because when we consider 5 years is an even longer time, like a much longer time. But what they don't realize is that because they see, like, I get the paper every day too, and because everybody is bombarded by headlines about it all the time, it kind of makes us feel like more should be happening within a smaller period of time. So it's almost a psychology with regards to the rates are only going to be high for another 6 months. But if you're waiting for any kind of clear indication that the rates have dropped, you're already too late.
Yeah.
All the people that will have taken advantage of the slow market will have already done their transaction, and you're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like I talked to another guy, he's like, he's ready to go. And I basically like, what are you waiting for? Just get the list, start getting the listings and look at if you can steal a property out there right now, like
It's
just,
one of those things too, there's a lot of clients and a lot of buyers out there that are really fixed on what the actual rate number is, and they don't necessarily pay attention to what the additional terms are.
yeah,
If
exactly.
you're a little higher in the beginning and you get in a good market where you're not having to compete and you have plenty of time to exercise all the necessary due diligence, 6 months down the road, you're going to be laughing, especially if
Exactly. I
in
mean,
credit
well,
area.
this is what I'm sort of trying to tell people. Well, you got to stick to the variable rate right now, because in another 6 months time, our 5 year rate could be back to 4.5. So why would you, 3 months in, why would you lock into 6.1 right now when you know the bank is going to be selling the money at 4.5 even before there's two different rates that we're waiting to come down. We're waiting for the fixed rates to come down, and we're waiting for Bank of Canada prime rate to also come down. The Bank of Canada might not drop until, like you said, spring or summer of 2024. But people don't remember that these amounts of time are so long. 6 months of time is a long time when you think about, okay, what happened 6 months ago? Like from November 2020 to March 2020 was a completely different world. And we're gonna see there's gonna be a shift when rates are gonna drop and the market's gonna react and things are gonna take off again. But it could happen quickly. Like we're already seeing, a couple more news events and something's gonna change in the world, and the election is coming up, and who knows, Trump might be getting back in. So that's gonna send the markets into a tailspin. So people don't quite remember that 5 years is such a long time. So you're not going to be paying 6.1 the whole time as long as you don't lock in right now. So
Yeah.
don't take 5 year money from the bank right now, even if they're offering you a 5.5, because 5.5 is a crap deal for 5 years. Because I do think in another year and a half, we will be back at 4%. There's no reason they can't be selling this money as soon as bond yields drop, which are the fixed rates. That's the other component of the rate that we're waiting to come down. Fixed rates are already starting to react. So 2 months ago, I was selling 5-year money at 6.3, and now I can probably offer it at 5.6.
Yeah.
It's in another 6 months, it's going to go from 5.6 to 4.9. And everybody's going to say, why did I lock in at 6.1 when rates are clearly dropping? The banks are actually getting us to sign, just a mortgage broker note, the banks are getting us to sign a document that says you understand what you're getting into, and you're sort of like you're understanding that you're not going to sell your house, and then you're not going to have to pay out your mortgage, and that your situation's not fully changing, because when people pay out that mortgage 2 years in, they're going to have a $40,000 or $50,000 penalty.
Yeah.
So I always urge people, I sort of have a real conversation with the person when I'm having them sign this form, and I'm saying, like, if we can be taking variable right now, you should be. Even if your risk tolerance is, I have clients come to me and they complain about their risk tolerance. And I'm just like, you're gonna kick yourself in the ass when rates are at 4.5 and you've locked in at 6.1. So that's kind of the conversation I'm having with most people. But I'm showing my screen here.
Yeah.
I pay $99. I pay $99 a month to get Rob McGlister's newsletter. And what I'm going to try to do, I guess, especially for anybody that reads the newsletter, I'm going to try to include more bits about what he's saying in here. And he's kind of like, this guy's almost kind of fueling with these newsletters and with his content, he's almost fueling the bank and other people to start taking action and moving over to, starting to lower the rate, because he's kind of asking, like, when are mortgage rates going to get the memo? Things don't happen this quickly. Like, it doesn't have to happen in the next 2 weeks, but it'll definitely happen in the next 3 months or 6 months, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm trying to say. So when I go to this graph, the blue line is the current rate, the overnight rate, or the prime rate, I guess. Sorry, because it's over 2.5. The overnight rate is down here, actually. And you can see how this red line kind of is behind a lot of the bumps are behind. So this is the time lag that happens between inflation coming down, which is the red line, and the blue line, I guess, or sorry, the black line, and then the interest rate. And you can see the interest rate is just following almost after every downshift in the red line. This follows just by a little bit of time, right? So if we go to the end of the graph here, you don't have to be a highly paid economist to understand that, okay, this is going to peak out somewhere here. This blue line is, oh, whoops. Okay, this blue line is going to peak out. Oh. This blue line is going to peak out somewhere here, or it's already peaked. And it's going to start coming back down. Now, whether it's going to come back down to the previous blue line, we don't know. We don't think so. They're not going to give away money like they did before. They'll keep the rate within the neutral rate. So they'll keep the overnight rate within the neutral rate of 2.3%. So we're never going to, I don't think we'll ever see prime again at 2.45. Money was just too cheap. But we will see prime come down from its current 7.2 to 4.5. No problem. That's going to happen.
There's a lot of economists out there that are pretty confident it will settle, in that 4 to 4.5 or 4.25 range.
Yeah, it's gonna, that's where money is going to be cheap, right? So but as soon as the market gets flooded with cheap money, all those buyers that were having to wait on the sidelines are going to flood back the market, and you guys are going to go into a frenzy. We're going to go into a frenzy. 15 off. Well, I mean, out here, I joke, but like, the rest of Canada is not like this with regards to like unconditional offers and this and that.
Yeah, it's definitely, a bit of a heated scenario. There's incredible demand for property in Victoria. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
It's no joke that we actually have a housing crisis here. So we just have to keep trying to get it. I mean, now is when I'm trying to tell all my clients that don't have a property, just get it now. And a lot of people, I feel like, with young families, I mean, I'm encouraging all my friends and everybody to just get a second house. Just get a second single family dwelling so that your kids in 20 years can have a place to go.
Yeah.
You know, and not be trying to compete for a $1.5 million house, you know, because we're at eight. What is it? What is an average house here in Victoria now?
I think it's 1,175 or 1,2. It's right in around there.
And when I moved here to Victoria in 2005, I don't even know what it would have been back in 2005. I was sort of like oblivious. I was just starting to do mortgages with HSBC, I guess, and I would have said that a lot of my clients could get a house in Gordon Head for $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah.
Now you can't get a house in Gordon Head for less than 1.1.
Yeah.
So it's definitely much more than doubled in just the 15 or I guess 17 or 18 years that I've been here now.
It's a really good and healthy conversation to be having with their buyers, just to help them really truly understand the big picture. You know, waiting until the market's up in summer. Oh, there's going to be more listings. Oh, there's going to be more this.
No, don't wait.
The market's going to heat up, and there's
Yeah.
also there might be some more listings, but you're probably going to be dealing with twice as many buyers who have decided that now's the time because
rates are coming down.
Yeah, and
because so. It definitely won't be unreasonable for the fixed rates to even drop sooner than the variable rate. Because what it's going to do is the banks are using that as their little ploy to incent a lot of people on the variable rate to lock in higher than where the low is going to be.
Yeah.
Because all those people sitting in all those branches all around town all have mortgage targets for people that they need to lock in. And this is how the banks create a lot of their wealth, is that they lock in people at 5.5. They like a lot of these emails that I'm getting from my clients are like, they scare people still into saying the interest rates are still going to go up. I can probably find one in my email and send it and say, this is what banks are telling people right now, is to lock in at 5.8 or 6.1. Because they don't want people to lock in. They don't want people to stay on the variable rate, because once the spread is determined on the mortgage, they don't make more basically profit on the money when it's not locked in.
Fair enough.
But what we'll see is that as the fixed rates come lower, the spreads, the discount that the banks give on the variable rate is going to decrease.
Yeah.
So you're going to go from getting prime minus 1.1, which I have right now, to prime minus 0.5, because the fixed rate is going to be down to 5.2, and it's going to incent a bunch more people to lock in at 5.2.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just encouraging my clients to get into the market if you can, buy a rental property if you can. Now is probably the time. Interest rates will come down. It's just a matter of time. You asked sort of like, what are rates going to do in the 3 to 6 months versus the 6 to 12 months? And I just say, I don't care. You know, like over a 5-year period, we don't really care how fast the rate comes down within a year, because now is still the right time to just get into something anyways. You date the mortgage, you marry the property.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair point.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Darren, you had such good questions.
Yeah, you know, my thoughts on this, and you know, I kind of like I read a lot of articles and I follow, you know, the trends and stuff, and you know, the next 3 to 6, you know, I don't think we're going to see anything. And you're right, it doesn't really matter. You know, from the perspective of encouraging our purchasers to, you know, start making a move, the reality is in a year there's going to be a lot more buyers roaming around in the market. And if you think, you know, if the reality is what you're going to pay, you know, in your rate and what your payments are today, you know, are probably going to balance out, you know, in the short term, if you have a variable or a short term fix that you can renegotiate in a year or two if you get a reasonable rate. You know, by not being in a competing situation and by having
exactly how much money people can save.
Yeah, conduct your,
how much, you know, like,
and make sure that you're secure in their property. It's okay to pay a little bit, you know, higher rate right now, because ultimately, you know, the rate is certainly not something that people should be purely focused on.
Well, exactly.
Negotiate and change things up a little bit down the road is often more important than the actual number on the rate that you're paying.
Right. Yeah, I find a lot of clients are like singularly concerned on 50 or $100 difference per month. And I just say, like, right now, if you can get a property for 20,000 cheaper or 30,000 cheaper because you're not in a competing situation and because you have a desperate seller, like, have some perspective here. But anyways, yeah, thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah, Rom's got a thought here.
But just,
Sure.
you know, the reality is, firstly, I agree that, you know, now is a great time to buy when other people don't want to or can't or whatever. There are motivated sellers who are in distress. There's opportunities. Unfortunately, the other side of the reality is that there's a lot of buyers who do not have the ability, cannot afford, cannot qualify right now with these rates. But this is a time for us to really build those relationships and nurture those relationships with those people who in 6 months or a year will be able to take action. You know, be prospecting and building those relationships, and don't forget about the people and ignore the people who are going to be able to do something when the rates do edge down, which is seemingly inevitable.
I'm hoping that, I think it's really bad specifically with rates right now and qualifying, because I'm finding even dual income couples can't even afford something with less than 20% down. So I have one couple right now, mom's working full-time, $25 an hour as a healthcare aide. Dad's working full-time plus a job at Sobeys or Thrifties. So he's earning more than full-time. They have combined income of around $105,000, and I'm still coming up with their maximum purchase price of around $480. So with $30,000 down. So like, what's that?
That works in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, it works in Winnipeg, but it doesn't even work for it. You know, they'll be able to get, I guess, a 1-bedroom condo somewhere. But you know, a big family can't live in a 1-bedroom condo. Like, so it comes back to that housing, that overall problem of housing affordability that we can. But I agree, we have to try to help everybody. We have to make sure that everybody has a plan to get ready. So like, okay, if it's not going to happen now, here's a list of things that you should try to do, and maybe in 6 months we'll take another look at it. Corresponding, we might have a lot of short-term rental inventory hit the market, because a lot of investors are just going to wash their hands clean of it and want to sell a unit. But a lot of these units, I guess, are so small.
Some of them are, yeah, but we are seeing quite a boost in inventory for Airbnb condominium type properties.
Yeah, because this is specifically, we haven't seen this a lot. I don't feel like we've seen this a lot in the general property market, but this legislation really did affect things.
Yeah,
I think. So, you know, another thing that to watch over sort of the long term is, well, how is legislation going to play into our housing market? You know, this is the main buzzword right now, and this is going to be the main buzzword for a long time. Because it's only the problem is only getting worse, and the better we do, the worse it gets, because the more people will want to be able to afford a home of their own. So we need innovative minds to come up with solutions, for sure.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for David while he's still here with us?
Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys, and we'll chat soon. Oh,
Thanks.
I'll make sure that yeah, thanks, guys.
Let's see. Oh, there's everybody. Okay. Well, I see a bunch more of you have joined us now. Appreciate that. We did pretty much get rolling right at 9 o'clock. So for those of you that joined late, I did record the conversation there with David. I can share that video for you guys a little bit later on this afternoon once it comes through. Wanted to touch base on a couple of things. I guess just a quick reminder, our Christmas party coming up December 16th. If you are going to stay, the party itself, there's no charge for. I know there's been some confusion around that. There's no cost to attend. the Christmas party. We've got some great entertainment lined up. It's going to be a really fun night. So looking forward to seeing you all there. If you are going to book a room, the Grand Pacific did have the $149 room rate reserved. There is a code for that. It's in your emails. Let me know if you need it. And I see a note there from Elika. Elika will share the code again, maybe with everybody. And book it sooner than later. They are subject to availability. There's going to be a lot of activity downtown, so the longer you wait, the less likely you're going to be able to get that. Wanted to touch base also on a disciplinary action that came through from the real estate board, Victoria Real Estate Board. It was a complaint by a consumer that came into the Victoria Real Estate Board regarding the activity of a listing agent who ultimately actually, followed their seller's instructions quite well. It ended up being a competing offer situation. The buyer's agent had asked to be kept informed if there were any offers. He inquired, none had came through, asked to be updated. Client decided they were going to make an offer, and when they made the offer, the listing agent told the buyer agent, that we had just accepted another offer. There were instructions handed out that the buyer agent would be kept informed, and that the seller would be looking at offers at a specific point in time. The seller then, in writing, communicated to the seller's agent that, we want to look at this offer because a subsequent offer had come in, and we're quite happy to accept it and move on. The listing agent went through the process with the seller. Obviously, the previous buyer agent was notified, and the consumer actually filed a complaint with the Victoria Real Estate Board. So while the listing agent did what they needed to do as far as looking after their client, there was a business standards or a practice standards or professional standards review done in not informing the other buyer agent. Long story short is, even though the listing agent did everything and the seller was happy and everybody was great, they ended up getting fined $2,500 and reprimanded for not following the direction for presentation of offers rules that the Victoria Real Estate Board has. So really the key is, when you're taking that listing or you're having that conversation with your sellers about how we're going to manage this, what you decide then and there, and it should be a conversation that you have when you're listing the property, especially if you think that it's going to be a highly desirable property and there's going to be a significant amount of activity. Make sure you establish the ground rules for dealing with offers right there and then. You can deal with them as they come in. There's no question about it. You can also set a time to have all offers presented by, or you will not be reviewing offers prior to a certain point. If you agree, or if instruction is to not look at offers, property goes live Monday, you're not looking at offers until Friday. If those are the instructions, make sure that you are not reviewing offers until Friday, and make sure that your seller understands that. And if they are considering looking at a preemptive offer or another offer that has come in that they weren't expecting, make sure that adequate notice goes out to every party that has expressed interest in potentially putting an offer forward. The key step there that was missed was just that. There was not adequate notice delivered to the other buyer agent, and so therefore the Victoria Real Estate Board determined through their professional standards and professional conduct that was a breach of the rules, and ultimately it was a $2,500 penalty. So one of those things to be acutely aware of at the onset of your listing when you're taking it. Decide how you're going to handle any offers coming forward, and make sure that message is consistent. Put it in the realtor notes. You're reviewing offers as they come in, or you're not looking at offers until such date. Ultimately, it's up to the seller on how they want to deal with it. And it's up to you to make sure that the process goes smoothly and you stay obviously within the guidelines of the rules of the multiple listing service. Andy.
Yeah, so just to clarify, in a situation where your client has instructed you that they do want to delay offers to a certain point in time, and then review them all, if they change their mind somewhere along the line because a bully offer comes in or that wants to be looked at before the deadline, then it's incumbent upon us to inform everybody else that things have changed. You know, we now have an offer in hand, and if you would like to compete, now is the time.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, and it has to be done with adequate time for them. Now, there's no definition on what adequate time is, but you have to allow them adequate time to prepare and come to the table.
Gotcha.
Ron?
I was quite surprised in reading the disciplinary action, because as I read it, the listing agent had followed his client's legal and lawful instructions, which were in writing, which to my understanding superseded other stuff. But he was penalized and fined for that because of the breach of the board rules. As far as this adequate time thing, I don't know how they can measure and enforce that, because we're really in the situation where it depends how much time the buyer gives in their offer. If they only give an hour, that's all you got. So it'd be interesting to see if something played out where that was a complaint and how they deal with that. Ultimately, the lesson from it, from this precedent that's been set by the ruling, I believed that if our seller gave us written instructions to, I guess, not communicate to others because they felt for some reason that was in their best interest to not tell the others that they were dealing with an offer. If the seller, that is in contravention of the board policy, and you could be held accountable and fined for that. So your seller needs to know that, and you need to, at the outset, communicate to your seller the rules that you want to play by, and if they don't agree with that, you need to know that you're at risk.
And in this case in particular, I think the key factor that played in the ruling against the listing agent was that the secondary offer or the the follow-up offer that came through, it was accepted without notifying the previous buyer agent. I think that's where they found their ground to challenge the effectiveness.
I would, if it was opposite, and say you had a seller and maybe you didn't lay that groundwork, and you had an influx of showings, you had an offer right away, you present that offer, and they say, actually, I want to hold showings. I want to see what happens with the showings tomorrow. I want to hold offers till like 2 days from now.
Yeah.
She is allowed to kind of.
Yeah. So if you've received an offer, you can review the offer. One, you can you can tell the buyer agent that we have a fair amount of activity. We are not going to be we want to wait until tomorrow before we look and respond. If the buyer is willing to extend the acceptance time of that offer, assuming it's within a timeline that doesn't allow you to wait till tomorrow, then have them do so. Have them change the acceptance time, have them initial it, and have them send it back. And that way, it's still first on the table. Be sure you'll acknowledge and say, look, if there are competing offers, we will let you know. But in the meantime, we're happy to have this one sit on the table. If the buyer is insistent on needing a response right away, the seller has two options. One, they can negotiate the contract, or two, they can just decline it. Just because they have an offer doesn't necessarily mean they have to accept it, doesn't mean they have to counter it. They can say, thank you, but no thank you. We're going to wait and see what happens.
At that point, do I need to have that form signed that said that this is my seller's offer instructions?
No, the instructions, the direction for the presentation of offers really is a form that was designed and built around the environment where you are expecting to compete in a multi-offer situation, and that provides transparency, and it provides equal opportunity for all buyers. So if you're expecting multiple offers, and you want to set a date to review them. You want to allow people time to get through. You want to allow, opportunity for people to conduct any due diligence. So, as I said, you go live on Monday, we will not look at offers or negotiate any offers until Friday. Then you wait until Friday. If you don't set a date, you look at offers as they come in, and you just make sure you keep everybody else notified.
Okay.
Having the form signed with the direction, is a bit of a challenging, because once it's signed and you have that authorized direction, it must be followed, within the rules and within the regulations. If you are going to change those instructions, they need to be done in writing, and as mentioned, you need to notify everybody that has expressed any interest at any level whatsoever. And you need to make sure that everybody that has contacted you about the property is notified. And the real estate board, I don't know about Vancouver Island, but in Victoria, the real estate board puts the onus on you to make sure that you contact everybody. So be very thorough in your communications, and always allow for an opportunity for another buyer to come forward. Victoria Real Estate Board stands behind it, saying they want equal opportunity for buyers across the board. They don't want buyers to lose out on opportunity, and that's why the rule is what it is. But it is ultimately the responsibility of the listing agent to make sure that everybody is aware of that situation.
When you say everybody, I understand that you're talking about every agent that approaches, that has talked to me on Touch Base. Are you talking about, like, even if I've got like 11 messages from random people from realtor.ca?
No. General public, no. Realtor members, cooperating realtor members, yes. Yeah. If you're getting random calls and stuff on your listing, following up with those leads is always a good thing. They may not be interested in that party. Maybe you can convert them to a client and sell them something else. If they express interest in your listing, then be sure to refer them to somebody else in the office so that they can get independent representation, and make sure that they have equal opportunity. If they choose not to, that's fine. But be sure to provide them with obviously with your representation disclosure, your unrepresented party disclosure, and your risks to unrepresented party transaction form. They don't have to sign it and return it. Just make sure you have a record that it was presented to them.
There's certainly no downside in communicating to anyone who's expressed any interest that there's an offer coming in. That would certainly be part of my practice, is to let everybody know.
Yeah. Because it should, in all likelihood, generate more activity. But
definitely, and I definitely do, but I just wanted to make sure that when you're talking about everyone, I need to make sure, how am I going to stay out of real estate jail? Like, who are those people that I need to tell?
So you need to communicate to all the agents, and you need to keep in mind the best interests of your client. Just another little reminder. I see 20-something of us on the screen here, but only about half a dozen who have a video active. To get your PDP credits, your video has to be on. Just a reminder.
We are seeing a lot of, speaking of PDP, I am seeing quite a few license renewals come up. Remember that it's really important to not leave this stuff till the last minute. We have our legal update and ethics, which are required through BCFSA boards, the Victoria and Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. You need 18 credits, which is the equivalent of 3 full day courses in a 2-year licensing cycle. It's not a lot, and realtors often stress themselves by leaving this all till the last minute. So just don't leave it till the last minute. Make sure you get it done, and you will have a much easier time when it comes time to renew your license. Any other thoughts or questions on that? We were talking about an offer coming in and amending the expiration date of that offer. Now, I've had a very lengthy conversation with Peter DeMeo about this. We've had a recent negotiation between us and another office. And a challenge came back from the other office refusing to action or present a counteroffer that had come in because the offer had gone past its original expiration time. The client amended the expiration time and sent it forward. The listing agent on that particular property insisted that the contract was dead and it needed to be rewritten.
That's a mistake.
Now, it is. Now, the part of that challenge is really understanding the difference between an offer and a contract.
Yeah.
An offer to purchase is written on a prefabricated contract of purchase and sale document, but you don't actually have a contract until you have an accepted contract, which means all terms, conditions, etc., everything is agreed to by both parties. If you have an offer, or if somebody presents you with an offer, the expiration time, really, if that comes and goes, the only thing that has really happened with that document is you've lost your unilateral ability to accept that offer as is. If it goes past the acceptance time and you decide you want to accept it, what you need to do primarily is change the acceptance time, initial it, and send it back for acknowledgement or initial or acceptance to the other party. You've lost your ability to accept it, but you haven't lost your ability to amend it and present it as a counter offer. Even just changing the acceptance time, that's enough to warrant calling it a counter offer. Send it back, get an initial, and put your finalized acceptance date in once that thing has been initialed. Once you have that, your offers back and forth, and that's the thing, an offer going back and forth isn't a contract. It's an offer or a discussion on forming a contract. Once you form that contract, you are bound by the dates, terms, and conditions within that contract. If you have subjects, for example, or you have, certain terms that allow for one party or require one party to perform a certain action, it must be done by a certain time, or there's a breach, or two, if it's a subject and you haven't met the subject and you haven't dealt with those subjects, and the date passes, that offer is dead. You cannot revive that contract is dead, and you cannot revive a dead contract of purchase and sale. I have seen it in the past where, people have, used the not best practice of sort of backdating addendums and so on and so forth. I've also seen cases where those types of situations get challenged in court. And even with a backdated addendum, the bottom line is a dead offer is a dead offer. You cannot revive it. If it dies, if your contract to purchase and sale dies, you must rewrite it fresh and new. You cannot revive it once it's dead. Is there any...
Just to further clarify what Darren's saying, when you have an accepted contract, let's say it's subject to financing by November the 30th, November 30th comes and goes and conditions have not been removed. They get their approval on December the 1st and they send you their subject removal. It's an invalid subject removal. The contract died on November the 30th. And they can't, even with both parties agreeing to accept the subject removal on December the 1st, if it was challenged in court, the court would consider it to be a dead and expired contract. And so in that case, a new offer has to be submitted, without the subject condition, obviously, at that point.
There can be some really challenging situations, and a lot of times, everybody's happy to talk about it and everybody's happy to say it's okay, but it does happen, and it can happen where you find yourself in a challenging situation like that. The seller of a property, for example, in Ron's case, they could get a better offer on December 1st, and they're more than willing to go with it. It can be challenged. The initial buyer they have to respond within a timely manner. As listing agents, we need to be acutely aware of when those subject due dates are, or the key points. And I would encourage everybody to, you know, put a couple of dates in your phone and in your calendars, or in your CRM that you must be made aware of. Transaction Desk will allow you to, will send you notifications if you set it up, if you have subjects that are due on a certain date, but put them in your calendar. If you're a buyer agent and there's a subject, you know, for the seller, for example, keep an eye on that. You know, we saw a contract last week where we were the buyer agent and there was a condition for the seller, but the seller agent did nothing and was non-communicative, and they did not actually action the subject that they needed to deal with. And we ended up dealing with it on our end, but ultimately that is the seller's responsibility. Even if that is the case, please remember, you know, as buyer agents, it is your responsibility to make sure that the contract proceeds accordingly. So if you're not hearing anything or you're not seeing anything, you must follow up and ensure that that contract remains binding for the benefit of your buyer. Because if they lose out on it, and they discover they've lost out on it, and it's because we missed following up or we missed this little detail, they're probably not going to be very happy with us. Any comments? Questions?
I guess one interesting point, just, you know, they differentiate between a contract and a term expiring, like a subject removal that has a deadline, and a deposit. A deposit that comes in late is considered a breach of the contract and can be mutually agreed to extend, which is what we do.
Yeah, which does happen. The key point there too is it is a breach, and it can be mutually agreed to amend, but it doesn't have to. Potentially, you know, if we're late on a deposit, that potentially opens the door to a seller to walk away for breach of contract. So we want to make sure that if we have tasks, make sure that they're followed, and utilize your phones, calendars, reminders, CRMs, all that kind of stuff, so that we don't miss it. A deposit, generally speaking, is, you know, a relatively easy one to get around. There is an acknowledgement for a late deposit that all parties sign to, you know, keep the contract enforced and everybody agrees to move forward. But yeah, if those types of things happen, it's really important to stay on top of, and don't allow, you know, a seller to walk away. In particular, if your, you know, your buyer is super keen, they sometimes forget when deposits are due. They sometimes miss dates. Ultimately, it is your responsibility as their realtor and their representative to make sure that they follow the timelines that we have negotiated for them. Andy.
Yeah, just touching on the deposit thing there. So is it enough to, once you've had your deposit put in the trust account and it's landed there, your conveyancer tells you yes, it's there. Is it okay just to, you know, let the other agent on the other side know, hey, yeah, no, we received it? Or do we need to send proof of that? Like, what's best practice?
No, you can just notify them. You can send them an email or send them a text message. Just send them a note that says deposits received and confirmed. And to be honest, you know, just because your deposits, you know, due, you know, within 24 hours of acceptance or within 2 business days following subject removal, doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave it till the last minute. You know, if you're working through your conditions and everything's looking really good, start the process of collecting the deposit. You know, if it's going to be due and payable, why risk, you know, potentially, you know, having troubles collecting it or risk it being late? If things are moving forward, if your buyer is really comfortable, make the deposit payable. I know that there's a pretty regular practice of having deposits due and paid upon subject removal. Arguably, that's technically when it becomes at risk, and I think that's why that practice has developed that way. Also, certain real estate models, brokerage models, have accommodated for that practice. There are some brokerages that have an office fee or a transaction charge to the realtor whenever a deposit is collected. And so we did see a shift in practice that moved it to payable upon subject removals. That way the realtor could avoid having to pay an office charge, yada, yada, yada. We don't operate that way, but that was certainly one of the reasons behind the due upon subject removal term being built in. There is a lot of value in having a deposit payable, within a reasonable time following acceptance. It shows good intent. It tells the seller that, hey, we're serious enough that we're willing to even just put some money on the table, even though it's not at risk. There is value in the perception from a seller's standpoint. If you have two offers that are relatively the same, subject to financing, whatever, one's got, deposit payable right away and the other one's payable, after subjects get removed, which one is your seller going to be more comfortable in reviewing? All material terms are the same. One's going to put the money up right away. The other one wants to wait. Which one's going to look better for them?
Any little thing that'll benefit your place, as opposed to other parties is perfect. I like the idea of putting the deposit in our trust account, because it's sitting there in trust anyway. Yeah. Worst comes to worst, we just give it back to them, if they decide to not transact, right?
It does need a release, which has to be signed by all parties. There are times where a seller might be angry, disgruntled, or have challenges with respect to wanting to sign a general release. Generally speaking, it's a fairly simple process to do. There have been a few times where it's been a little bit challenging, and ultimately that's, if you can't have that discussion with the other agent or the buyer's agent in that respect, call me, get the brokers involved, and it's a delicate dance, but more often than not, we can have that release signed, in a relatively expedited manner. And if the buyer pays the deposit, once we have that release signed and you moved on to another purchase, we can just transfer that deposit in the trust account and assign it to another purchase.
Well, I was more so thinking like having the deposit, sitting there ready in our trust account before you even like put an offer forward on a place. It's almost like a commitment to work with you. Oh, okay, so you guys are wanting to transact at some point. You're actively looking for properties in this price range. Why don't we just do this? We have your money in our trust account, so when we're ready to rock, we could let them know.
A retainer, yes, but we don't want a deposit in our trust account without a contract.
Okay.
No.
And I mean, I've heard people doing that for the rescission period amount anyway, at the very least.
So there's a reason why common practice is that a deposit isn't collected until after condition removal, because it makes the buyer vulnerable to the seller's refusal to release it. You're buying $1 million property, you put $50,000 in trust, and the seller challenges that you didn't actually do your due diligence, and they're not signing the release. They're not getting the money back. We have to pay it into court, and lawyers will get it.
In the worst case scenario, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen a dozen times in 30 years.
Yeah.
I've had clients just have a check ready to go, and say, and then when you go to do your offer, they say, I've already got the deposit, if you're thinking about it that way.
They absolutely can pre-purchase, a bank draft or something like that. Just make sure they keep it in a safe place. Have it locked up somewhere, or don't lose it. A bank draft can only be cashed by the person who it's addressed to. But if you lose it, then that's essentially losing 50 grand in cash.
And don't take on the practice of getting that check from them and holding it in your briefcase. That's a breach of your laws.
Yeah.
So if you receive a deposit, you have to give it to the office.
Yeah. And we need to assign it if it's in the trust account. We need a trade to assign it to.
Back to your question about notice in general, Andy, about the deposit and being received or not. The default requirement is not to notify them that you have received it. The default requirement is if you have not received it. And you have a legal responsibility to the parties to the contract that it's disclosed to them. They're notified if the deposit is not received on time. And then the other party, the seller, would have the right to terminate the contract.
And that goes for more or less any breach of a term related to a contract. So any breach that you're aware of must be disclosed to the other side. The most common is late deposit, but it must be disclosed immediately to the other side. Yeah, Robin?
Isn't it also possible then if the deposit didn't come in on time and there happened to be a backup offer, they could accept the backup offer?
Yes. I would definitely have your seller get a legal opinion, but generally speaking, if a fundamental term of the contract is breached, it does allow the seller the opportunity to cancel it and walk away. But make sure to talk to their lawyer first.
So
quickly.
when you're you have a seller and the buying agent is to hold that deposit, so you just take, you know, the buying agent's word as they've received that deposit.
You should be able to, yeah.
So we don't actually get like a notification from their conveyancer to ours or anything like that. No.
You can ask them to confirm the deposit has been received, and they have to say yes or no. If it turns out that the deposit's not received, then obviously that's a breach. There's a challenge there with the contract, and that particular realtor is going to be in a substantial amount of hot water for
Who would know?
One of the things that they do in the annual trust audit, BCFSA, is they look for, deposits that have been late and confirm that there is in fact notice been given and acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. We
That
should,
leaves so much room for error. And
we all have the duty to act honestly, and if there is a breach, you have to make that disclosure. You will, if that is when it's discovered, because there are lots of layers in reviews and so on and so forth, with respect to tracing these elements. If there's a breach that has not been disclosed to you, or if you're aware of a breach that has not been disclosed, then you can absolutely be in a whole lot of trouble. You can ask for proof. You can ask for a copy of the deposit form. All you need is confirmation, and you should be able to rely on another professional realtor's word saying, yes, the deposit is confirmed.
The biggest thing that BCFSA polices is how we handle the public's money. So trust deposits and trust are a big deal.
Yeah. Okay, it is 10 a.m. Does anybody have anything further on that topic or on that subject? Good discussion this morning, everybody. We will see you tomorrow up in Cowichan Bay. Is it Cowichan Bay?
I don't know.
Cow Bay.
It is Cowichan Bay, yeah.
Yeah.
Full story for the business. Yes.
We'll see you up there. I know that there's some booklets and stuff like that being done. Hopefully you've all done a little bit of homework. It'll be fun to kind of work through that with you guys. Give me a call if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.